Hello viewers, and welcome to the Jctr Corner, which is a program brought to you by the Jesuit Center for Theological Reflection in collaboration with Loyola TV. Tonight we're going to look at a very interesting topic of corruption and its various impacts on different segments of society. With me in the studio, I'll be joined by a program manager from Jctr, whose name is Mr. Innocent Ndashe. To present the program, my name is Natasha Namalambo Muhila. Mr. Ndashe, good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Natasha, and it's my pleasure to be hosted on this program, and I look forward to this discussion.
Oh, thank you so much. So as it is, would you help us understand what is corruption?
Yeah, I think corruption has become a common word that is currently being used in our country. Because of what has actually happened and how possibly things have been unfolding over the years. So really when we are talking about issues of corruption, it involves, I think, situations that we see in our society where public officials take advantage of their offices to enrich themselves or to gain. To ensure that they gain money. It could be in form of money, but it could be in form of money, it could be in terms of profit, but really the ultimate goal is really that someone uses public office to really benefit themselves, meaning as they benefit themselves, you then overlook the common good. For example, you overlook, for example, the good that the society needs to enjoy. So you create an environment where just very few people are actually able to enjoy from the public good.
Okay, that is very interesting. So I wanted to find out, with regards to corruption and governance, what could be some of the costs that corruption can bring to the governance of a particular country? Like maybe, for instance, within the social fabrics, the environment, and just largely the economic costs of corruption.
Yeah, thank you, Natasha. When we look at corruption and the negative side of it, is that it has really a negative effect on society.
Okay.
If you, for example, I'll try to maybe break it down. For example, if we take on the political stage or the political cost that comes with the legal corruption. For example, take an example of, say, if there is an election or there is it could be a presidential, it could be parliamentary, or it could be a local government elections. Okay. For those, for example, that would be in government. Then by virtue of them having the power, they are governing, then they take, for example, they use their offices, for example, to maybe to divert a huge amount of money, for example, where now they start maybe getting, buying meal that they are going to entice voters for them to be voted. So in that instance, then you disadvantage like people who do not have much money, people who do not have much capacity, but possibly they are good leaders. So in a competition where there is unfairness, it's largely what we've seen, like in our country. For example, if you look through, I mean, what we saw in the 2011 elections, I think the ruling party then, the MMD, I think had a lot of money as compared to the opposition, and we saw that in instances where underhand methods, both from the ruling party or the opposition, I think people used underhand methods. We saw that in some instances, we've had situations where not very good people, the right people, have been actually elected into political office. So meaning when they come, then when you elect such people into office, ultimately those people will not have the interest of the community that they represent. The community might not see the benefits, because at the end of it all, because of the huge investments that they had put in, meaning as they then run or they lead, then they would want to take back their proceeds. So you see a situation where bad leaders then would try to use those offices to enrich themselves, rather than maybe putting up, for example, in a community where they need maybe the ultimate priorities of the communities could be maybe having maybe a clinic, it could be a school. those political leaders, by virtue of them wanting to get back what they would have invested, then they tend to pocket it. Ultimately, the community then suffers by not having quality healthcare facilities, good schools, and things like that. So really, that is more detrimental. It even goes further that when those people are running political office, then they would, since their interest is not serving the common good, we see that even the policies that they would put into place would be totally policies that would largely not benefit the country. So that would be on the political side. But again, when you look at the social cost, again, they would also be huge. We see that possibly it gardens or it builds in our society some issue of mistrust between the governed and the governors, because people are not getting really the benefits. So it's in instances then where you might see the communities or the ordinary citizens rising actually against their leaders, because now there will be issues of the leaders not being accountable. So you have unstable society. And now in an instance where you have unstable society, meaning to a larger extent, then you actually be discouraging even foreign investment that might want to come in your community, in your country. And in a situation, for example, in our case where we largely depend on foreign investment. So meaning, for example, if there is no adequate investment, for example, to exploit our minerals, meaning most of our people then will not have access, for example, to jobs. We'll have situations, for example, where the agriculture sector will go limping, because there is actually no money that has come in, and government is not actually benefiting. Then on the environmental side, you might see, there are quite a number of regulations that government has put in place to ensure that possibly we preserve the environment, to ensure that we promote sustainable development. But where you have issues of corruption, you will find that possibly even areas where investment shouldn't be established, you will see maybe those that have so much power giving maybe plots to maybe water sources, and this is where we might see maybe our points of water sources are adversely affected, because, for example, institutions such as ZEMA that are entrusted to ensure that they control, for example, on how people exploit the environment might be weakened. So really, the corruption really is more detrimental to our society. So it's something that we shouldn't actually tolerate. We see it like in our case, just narrowing it. We are complaining at the moment that things are not running. Just in the recent times, we have, for example, a by-election in Chilubi, and we've seen so much milling go into that constituency. The chances for the local people to vote the right person is actually strengthened. Okay. That might have ultimate consequences on the lives of the people out there.
Okay, so I'm so glad that you've holistically explained the concept of corruption. So then I wanted to find out, in relation to the morals and values, and especially considering the fact that Jctr is a faith-based organization, what do you think or feel could be some of the impacts of corruption to the Christian nation?
Really, what we see, I think there's a lot that we need to really do. One of the things that we see, we are currently struggling with the whole question of poverty levels in our country. I think as of 2015, if we follow odd statistics, according to the Living Conditions Monitoring Survey, we are talking of a poverty statistic of about 54.4%, which is nearly over half of the population being adversely affected by maybe a number of other factors. Meaning, people have challenges to have access, for example, to decent food, access to quality healthcare services, access to clean water. So those would be the over 50% of the population. But that is a 2015 statistic. But if you follow the trend between 2015 and to date, we largely see that actually the cost of living in our country has actually drastically increased. Just to give you an example that, for example, if you follow the Jctr basic needs basket, as of January 2019, the cost of living, for example, for Lusaka was around 5,300 kwacha. When we are talking of January 2020, the cost of living has actually gone up to 7,400 kwacha, meaning a lot of people actually have hugely been thrown into poverty, because I think there has been this jump. But when you look at what is happening in our economy at the moment, long hours of load shedding, we saw, I think, some impasse surrounding the mining sector, for example, where Konkola Copper Mines and government were fighting, and we saw job losses in that area. But all these situations, erratic electricity supply, we see job losses. We see that a lot of our people are not economically productive. So meaning even when we are talking about the 54.4%, actually that is an underestimation. We should actually be talking of a poverty statistic of over 70% at the moment in our country. So meaning a lot of people have actually been thrown into huge suffering, which is again against our principles as a Christian nation. I mean, we call ourselves a Christian nation, and in that instance we expect that possibly the dignity of the human person needs to be protected. How do we protect that? Government needs to ensure that possibly public funds are prudently accounted for, public funds adequately invested in essential sectors such as agriculture and the like. But because of the rampant corruption that we are currently seeing, I think that is actually not happening. Statistics, I mean, just recently the Financial Intelligence Center just released its 2018 report, and it shows that corruption has actually been increasing in procurement, for example, in the infrastructure sector, and largely in the construction of roads. I think there have been allegations around that. Allegations have also been raised, and people have raised outcries that when we recently acquired fire tenders, I think there wasn't proper accountability. And we see that adversely actually having some spiral effect. For example, government do not have at the moment adequate funds, for example, to invest. I mean, we've been struggling with the climate change, and we see that hydropower generation is actually not sustainable. So we need to expand it. But government do not have adequate resources. We also see that, for example, social protection programs. If you look at statistics from 2017 to date, we see that there is actually erratic disbursement of funds from government to, for example, to the Ministry of Community Development, and also to the actual beneficiaries. So we really see that our lives of the people, human dignity is actually has been compromised. Really, something has to be done.
Okay. In case you're just joining us, this is a Jctr corner, and with me in the studio I have Mr. Innocent Ndashe, and we'll take a short break. See you soon.
To advertise on this program and enjoy amazing introductory rates, please call us on +260 211 290959 or +260 211 290912 or +260 953 538 000, or send us an email at loyolazam@gmail.com.
Welcome back to the Jctr corner, and today we're discussing a very important topic on corruption. With me in the studio is Mr. Innocent Ndashe, a program manager from the Jctr. Your presenter today is Natasha Namalambo Muhila. So Mr. Ndashe, welcome back on the show.
Thank you, Natasha.
Okay, so I was wondering, do we have adequate laws And what are the penalties for people who engage in corrupt practices within Zambia?
For laws, really, I think we are good at formulating laws.
Okay.
Yeah. We have a good number of them in many areas, and when you are looking at the aspect of corruption, I think there are quite a number of them. I'll just quickly mention a few. For example, you have the Anti-Corruption Act, Anti-Corruption Act of 2012. That's one of the acts, and the act is a little bit broader enough. That's the goodness that, I mean, Zambia we recognize our roles at two levels. I think there are some commitments that we make at the international level, but even if we assent to roles at the international level or treaties, you can only make them functional if you domesticate them. And when you look at the Anti-Corruption Act of 2012, I think it has tried to do that, robust enough to try and deal with the problem of corruption, recognizing that corruption is not simply, it's not only a problem here in Zambia, but it is. So we have that. Then we have another one that I think it's that establishes the Office of the Auditor General. That's the Public Audit Act of 2016. Okay. So I mean, with the Office of the Auditor General, then it tries to give power to that office to ensure that it has power to access documents in public offices and check how public funds are used. And where they are found wanting, I think there are regulations on how, for example, action should be taken. Okay. There's also, I mean, we are heavily involved in procurement. There's also the Public Procurement Act of 2008. Again, a very good legislation that guides, for example, how public services are acquired. Then we also have another piece of registration that actually protects individuals who can give information to law enforcement agencies, and that's the Public Interest Disclosure Act of 2010. So we have all these acts. So when we look at all these acts, we feel that, and my feeling is that possibly what we need to do more is the whole aspect of enforcing them, ensuring that we make them work. Possibly where we have a problem is possibly the issue of maybe the penalties that are in place.
I'm very interested in that area.
Yeah. I mean, you should. If you have to deal with the issue of corruption, you have to be more comprehensive. But what we see, for example, I mean, we've seen situations where someone would have been involved in corruption, and those possibly are mentioned in the report of the Auditor General. All government does, for example, would be just to fire them.
Okay.
You make them lose employment. But you know how sophisticated someone who is involved, who has a corrupt mind, I mean, they can always find a way to find employment elsewhere. So I think my feeling and my view and Jctr's view is that possibly we need to strengthen that. And also we've been, I think, complaining of the whole aspect of maybe short sentencing. You've really stolen huge sums of money, deprived maybe the Zambian economy, but maybe someone is just jailed for 5 years. And people would love to actually be jailed for a short period, because they know if I go in for 5 years, when I come back, I'll still find my wealth, and that brings me to another maybe the shortcoming of maybe our enforcement of the law. I mean, people use stolen public resources to acquire a property. Okay. Again, when you look at property acquisition, we see that there's actually another provision that if, for example, someone stole, and investigative wings are more they have information that someone really stole. I mean, for example, Anti-Corruption Commission and other agencies can follow through. But really, the challenge has been we don't have like an agency in as much as there's provision that you can maybe repossess, you can freeze maybe their accounts, but we don't have like an independent agency that then follows this through. And that point has actually been raised, for example, by the Financial Intelligence Center.
Okay.
I mean, we also have the Financial Intelligence Center Act of 2010 that has established the Financial Intelligence Center. But all the center possibly does would be to investigate, but really following through and repossessing public property, I think we don't have capacity. So I think we really have to be comprehensive and ensure that possibly we strengthen maybe the sentences or the penalties that go with people who largely commit corruption.
Okay, so I think you can agree with me that we have some adequate pieces of legislation that deal with corruption in Zambia, but the problem lies in enforcement.
Yeah.
And honestly, I feel like it is a great appeal to each one of us to actually be or advocate to the government to say we need people who are engaging in corrupt vices to be put into the book. You can't imagine someone having 105 houses and not being able to, the property is not being able to be repossessed. Okay, so I just wanted to ask, within the Zambian sphere, do we have enough political will to end corruption? Actually,
that's where the major problem. If we look between our government, possibly where we made a little bit more progress in terms of fighting corruption, possibly would be between maybe 2002 and to 2008, and that was the time of the late President Levi Mwanawasa, because he stood. I mean, he was a no-nonsense man to the fight against corruption. And really people who were around him feared him that if, say, information went to the president that you are involved in this illegal activity, you would either lose your job or you would you actually let the law enforcement agencies actually follow through the case. So I think there was really a strong drive to fight corruption. We saw a little bit after 2012 when President Michael Sata, the late, I mean, he tried to bring actually some sanity and I mean, there was some way pushed forward, but again, there was some letdown. I know there was one of the ministers who was alleged to have been involved in corruption, and he told, I think, the Anti-Corruption Commission that he threatened actually the Anti-Corruption Commission that if you are investigating any of my ministers, you should let me know. Already that's interference. But we also see at the moment, actually, when you look at the trends of corruption, like I think statistics that are coming from, for example, from the Financial Intelligence Center report and the AG report, we see that actually corruption is on the increase. It simply shows that the political drive, the political will to fight corruption is actually at the moment lacking. We are just seeing it. I mean, there is a by-election in Chilubi. The people in Chilubi have been actually been hit by anger for several months now, but we have only seen the rampant supply or taking of millimil in huge quantities just when the by-election has come about. And already that shows you that I think the current head of state has no drive to fight corruption. Okay, I think I should move into Chilubi. There's so much hunger at my place. You actually benefit more by getting so many bags of millimil and money and
I'll
all those
start arranging.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Ndashe, I just wanted to find out what exactly is the role of the citizens, the church, and civil society organization when it comes to fighting against corruption?
Yeah, you know, with the current problem and the current, maybe really the negative effects on our economy, possibly we need to do a little bit more. One of the things that we need to do would be to enhance, largely you need to enhance accountability. And in this place, I think this is where the citizens, institutions such as the civil society, of course, when we talk about civil society, we are talking of those that are driven by values. They live or they exist for the common good. We've seen others who support things that they are not supposed to support. So a real civil society organization and the church. What really needs to be done is to ensure that we seek accountability from our political leaders. I know one of the institutions that is actually very critical, for example, whenever they spoke would be, for example, the Zambia Conference of Catholic Bishops.
Okay.
I mean, we expect them, for example, in this instance, to even up their game by issuing, for example, the pastoral letter that denounces corruption, that denounces a leadership that engages in corruption. But also, more importantly, I think what we need to do is to build a citizenry then that resists corruption. And how do you do that? You need to ensure that we inculcate values through doing a lot of actually education, sensitization around the negative consequences of corruption. In as much as we might say we need to ensure that we have adequate registration, we strengthen registration. I think in the longer term, registration would work in the short term to deter corruption. But what you'd want is to have a morally upright society, a society that is built or guided by strong values that respects the common good, that respects, maybe whenever they see the next person, they see that person as someone who has been created in the image and likeness of God. Meaning that would ensure that even our actions, whatever we touch, it could be in business, in whatever transaction we want to engage in, I think we act with the heart that tries to ensure that the other person also benefits.
Okay, that is good. Well, viewers, before we conclude, because time is not on our side, I'd like to find out from the Jctr point of view. I'm told you guys do a lot of researches. So what recommendations would you give to local authorities with regards to combating corruption?
Yeah, quite a number of recommendations, but I'll just mention a few more. What would want to see in terms of registration really is, for example, to revise registration to ensure that we put in place an agency then that follows through all maybe the cases of corruption or the properties that are alleged to have been stolen. For example, one of the institutions that you might want to give authority to would be, for example, the Financial Intelligence Center. I mean, they bring about rich information about corruption, and I think if they were given a little bit more money to investigate and follow through the cases, I think that will really help the country. When it comes to, for example, the Anti-Corruption Commission, we need to empower them by giving them, for example, adequate resources, and that you mean possibly adequate financial resources, human resources, but also I think we need to go around a situation where the president appoints the head of the Anti-Corruption Commission. Possibly we need to find a system that ensures that possibly an independent body through maybe a credible process gets someone who heads the institution. Because really, I mean, there is adequate registration, but most of it is failing because there's so much like political interference. We see that in the law enforcement agencies. You talk about institutions such as the Anti-Corruption Commission, you talk about the judiciary, you talk about parliament, because the executive has so much power. So we need to find a way to curb power of the executive. But also, I think an active citizenry becomes very vital. Okay. We shouldn't be moved, even when we look ahead to 2021. I think my appeal and my wish is that the Zambian people would not look at political parties they belong to, but they would look at maybe leaders who would uphold the values of human dignity, the common good, opting for the poor. Leaders who will be selfless. I think that they should be leaders that they vote into political office, regardless of the political parties. But of course, even citizens using whatever platforms, I think they need to be voicing out against corruption.
Okay, so thank you very much. Mr. Ndashi has practically said everything I planned to say in my last speech. So then, this has been the Jctr Corner that is brought to you by the Jesuit Center for Theological Reflection in collaboration with Loyola TV. With me in the studio today, I had Mr. Innocent Ndashe, who helped me critically analyze the corruption issues in Zambia. Your presenter for today is Natasha Namalambo Muhila. Until then, it's goodbye.